I just noticed that you have two choices, and it's like you could live a disassociative life or one that feels way more than you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it that way, you're like, that one. Yeah, you don't get to choose how much you feel. And you're going to feel it very deeply, and maybe that's going to be anchoring you to your life. So yeah, what I was recognizing is abandonment wounds are very interesting because they're like the beginning of an existential conversation to where, and you might go, you're going to integrate it, whatever it is, whatever kind of characteristic that it developed in you, you're going to integrate because it's crucial to who you are as a part of you. And so you almost can't break the subconscious contract of, a lot of the times, we tell ourselves we want something, but if we got that very thing, we also tell ourselves the thing we are can never be loved. Mm-hmm. And so remember, that breaks like something that exists much larger than it, and it's reality, right? Which is, in order to receive anything that is truly what you desire, you have to be worthy of love. Well, what you are seeking, you must come with. And I feel that is the reflection of what exactly is it to develop a connection with your life. And I kind of talk about it a lot because it doesn't really mean anything until you get deeper with it, but I could definitely say that the connection I have to it is one that's really, really rich because it mirrors a romantic relationship. It mirrors something that's deeply intimate, an intimate relationship with a part of ourselves that's intrinsic. And you think about what men and women really are as an intrinsic truth that's manifested in the world. It is the very inevitability of your life is going to have that. And it was never something that we would ever talk about before, but you ever think about how absurd it is? The separation of men and women, and what that does to both men and women is so detrimental to what they are and what allows them to develop in becoming the best version of themselves. So you've already reduced the ceiling of the person's capacity because you've eliminated it from the very thing that allows them to develop it. And so you don't have people seeking that as an aim because, and by the way, to think of a romantic relationship or an intimate relationship is already reflective of one that you have with yourself. It's mm-hmm. actually identical. So don't you want to become familiar with that so it's not so strange when you experience it? And maybe you could, amplify the commitments that you've made to your life. And this is something I really like. You're going to like it. If you're not committed to your life and your potential, you will find somebody that's as committed to making sure that your potential doesn't happen. Mm. And for me, that was like a chapel bell. Yeah. It woke me up because it made me realize that's my biggest fear. And that's not just my biggest fear. I'm sure a lot of people share that fear too. And it's interesting because we'll typically ask for other people's guarantees for commitments we haven't made to our life. Like as if their guarantee is going to fix our commitment issue with what's important to us. We just use that as the excuse. Mm-hmm. It's the reason we give ourselves as to why, I haven't gone deeper. Like the whole thing about the trust of others eventually starts to become superficial until you start realizing that you use that as an excuse to be an unavailable person who pushes people away. And so if you're not willing to interact with an honest conversation and use truth as a way to push you against the barriers that you keep up and that push you away from love, then most conversation is never constructive. It's a way to avoid the walls that people have made themselves. And you will not only never feel connection, you will pretty much enable the person to, and this is going to get a little bit darker, you enable the person to utilize the relationship as the convenient option when the thing that you are taking conveniently is your life.
Explain on that.
The real relationship is one that deeply challenges you. And It's like, well, why does it challenge you? It gets you closer with your commitments to life. It gets you closer to your emotions. It gets you closer to your sex. It gets you closer to your heart. It gets you closer to your life. It gets you closer to your presence. It gets you closer to your insecurities. It gets you closer to your inadequacies. It gets you closer to your loss. So really, the relationship is not the thing that you use to escape life. It's the thing that you use to immerse and get deeper into your life. And maybe you haven't seen the value of it. And most people are actually trying to avoid their life and what that means. And they're like, if I can get a relationship, then I can, just like smoke the cigarette, or I can, get the joint. Mm-hmm. Or take the edge off. I feel that all that does is stops you from what you really want. And sometimes you have to be able to recognize that whatever part of you is in opposition, it's not something you need to fight, but it's something you need to know. You can make it a friend. If you make it a friend, then you both can recognize that your sum total of who you are has exposed you to all of what reality has, even including the dark parts of it. And that even that is confirming of the dream you seek. It's confirming of the love you desire. And that's the whole growing pains. The whole growing pains is recognizing that you don't need to fight yourself anymore. And in fact, actually, that very part of you is seeking that very thing. But what you have right now is a split from your consciousness that allows you to identify as this particular thing, because then you could identify with whatever group that has that. And then maybe that can give you more of a likelihood to meet somebody. Mm-hmm. And we often look at our partner, or at least the search for a partner, as something much deeper than just looking for somebody to be with. And it's like, no, it's looking for love. And it's a question of, can you be loved for who you are? Because when people start talking about a monogamous relationship or a deeply intimate relationship, you're talking about somebody that completes you. And then you might go, well, that's a ridiculous idea. Look, it is a ridiculous idea. You want to look for somebody that helps you get closer to the process of your own completion. That's a fulfilling relationship. Because I was at the Magic Castle the other day, and one of my brother's friend, my friend's brother, mm-hmm. he asked me a question, and he said, "Do you feel whole?" This was it actually hit me. Mm-hmm. I said, "No, I don't feel whole. I do feel fulfilled." And you're like, We're here on planet Earth to fill the holes in our soul. Mm-hmm. It's a healing process, the human experience. It's a healing process. It's not this. It's maybe even say it's a deeper connection to the divine, or the things we don't quite understand, God. And I find that to be a story. It has a beginning and an end. There's this kind of, the process of being is fulfilling to what you complete through your life. Mm. So there's this, I understand the whole left rib metaphor, I understand that in myself. I actually feel pain there. Mm-hmm. And I connect to it now. And I could tell you that the deepest suffering I've ever experienced is when I avoid looking into the void. Always. It's the worst thing ever. It's like I'm rejecting reality, and then that goes against a value system. And so I'm even beginning to have a little more nuance to what makes a value, and also truth may be existing at the core of every value. And if that's not something you begin to seek, then why would you address anything else in your life? And so you could say it's the best value you can ever have, which is just be truthful. And then maybe you could be truthful with yourself and where you're at. And then people are like, okay, well, that's enough of that value. I don't want to hold myself to it. We just said truth. We didn't say action. Maybe you're a narcissistic psychopath. Who knows? You want to find the truth of yourself is a real question. And so then it kind of put me into a different place, because after he asked me that question, I noticed that I loved everything about it, because it was so reflective of what life really is. And a deep hunger that a person has is not filled by any one person. Mm-hmm. I would just hope that the people you have around you get you closer to that hunger. Mm. Because what are you really hungry for?
Right.
You're hungry for something that your soul needs. And that's the thing, at a certain point where you take even an abandonment wound, which I was really interacting with recently, which is like, we talk about it as a wound, but really it's a vulnerability, because an abandonment wound is a reminder of that happening again that you live with. So it's like a very vivid memory. And then we go, oh, it's a wound. And it's like, well, can you find it?
Right.
And you're like, okay, well, so then I get it. So then that means that this thing is calling to my attention. As in, if it's very vivid, then I could interact with it. And it's a vulnerability of existence. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the hardest question we have to ask ourselves, and it's one that I believe most people have never even bothered to investigate, and it's, do you live with faith?
What do you think? Why do you think most people don't ask themselves that?
Because they're so misinformed.
Uh-huh. About what faith is?
Faith is, yeah. Very deeply misinformed.
Uh-huh. So what is faith? If you could break it down to a child, what is faith?
Break it down to a child. Children have it.
Uh-huh.
You don't need to break it down to them. They live with it.
Right. Okay, break it down to me then.
Yeah, adults, with the degenerative children, right? Yeah. No, children have faith. They don't question it, though. It's kind of paradisal. But I mean, it depends, some people's families don't really represent that, but
right.
In general, that's what it looks like.
Well, when I think of faith, I think of religion.
Well, which is, by the way, you're going to love the religious component of faith that exists outside of our ego's perception of religion. Christianity, Muslim, Buddhism, Judaism. No, that's just the way that you can quantify whatever the subsect territory is, a way you live your life, right? I don't have a particular answer as to what it is. It's more of like a description. It's more of a, it's the strongest person in the room, somebody lives with faith. And you're like, what do you mean by that? I mean, personally, what I'm beginning to realize is you can't, I'm learning it. And I've done a lot of videos on it, but I feel like this I want to take in a different direction. It's not straying from the other things that I said, but it's more, I feel like I just want to get closer to it myself. Like that's what I really want. Whatever that is beginning to change everything about how the way I live my life, right? And by the way, wouldn't you say that's called for? Where you live your life from? And you're telling me that wouldn't change everything? You know, you could be right about things, but you could just come from the wrong place every damn time. And it's like, because you being right doesn't really serve your best interest, because it's just actually a way for you to avoid what's actually underlying what you're right about. And I said this in one of the lectures, I said like an intellectual is somebody who's always right but always misses the point. To be exclusively one, of course, you know, to be somebody who uses their head, understands that, you know, there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger point than just, you know, to be right about a particular thing, because then maybe you're missing the bigger picture that surrounds the thing that you want to be right about. So you have to kind of have a purpose in relationship to your intellect. It's a place where your heart and mind meet. And it serves a function. And so I wanted to go back to the whole vulnerability points, because that to me is just, mwah, it's $1 billion. It's priceless. And it's priceless because you don't control people. And I would say that that's a fundamental wound that we live with. And by the way, that's a lie, that you can make people do things for you. And by the way, it's so contrary with the way that we live our lives. Because look, I do personal development, all right? I help people work their life out, but it's not the way that you think. And I want to make sure that's not a lie that people tell themselves, is that there's a practical solution to everything. In practice, things are different, but you know, in concept, they're the same. And I find that also really interesting, because that just goes to show how powerful that is, that an internalization of something allows you to live with it outside of you having to reduce it to just the practice of something. And then this comes to a commitment, and I think about, you know, all commitments can be really manifested between a great love. What's binding? Is it the agreement or that love that's shared? And we often don't have faith in the thing we call our humanity, right? Because what we really see our humanity as is what's reflective of in the world. We separate ourselves from it. You know, the world is like this. No, that's a reflection of you in every single way possible. Something that Carl Jung said is that this is the best period in near his 80s. It was after World War I and World War II. He said, if people would just take a moment to recognize that this is the perfect doorway to paradise. You just have to accept one thing to go into paradise, your capacity to evil that's been mirrored through the 21st century or the 20th century. It's the perfect time to discover what that is and what that looks like, because the more time you spend with it, all you're really talking about is humans' capacity for goodness and beauty. So I want to go back to the whole vulnerability point, because I found that to be very interesting, which was, what exactly did I find through a recognition of like, oh God, like people have left me. Take my business. Why are you staying here? Why do you do this? Here, you could say it's for the money, but that's not true, actually. It's not for the money. And then you go, well, it's for significance and recognition. I don't know how you would get that, but sure. Just going through other basic needs. But then you get those things. And then it's still there. If you were to interact with it, you would recognize something that actually makes you sit down on this chair and do what you do, that makes me speak the way that I speak. Now that is something you can't control, something you connect with. How do you get someone to stay?
You give them the option to leave?
You know, because there's such an interesting, like, the human behavior will typically go, it'll find its coping narrative of that very thing. I feel like this is something you could really interact with isolation that could set you free. And so what that really is everything about this wound-created mechanisms, or actually, in fact, maybe brought-out mechanisms, because you have to start changing the way that you see human nature. You don't just incorporate character into people. You bring out character from people. And it's why people in their 30s, they shave their face clean, or, you know, they grow a beard one day and they look in the mirror and they go, oh my God, I just became my father, right? Because you're revealing of the characteristic that came before. And you could say, well, you know, I think children are a little bit more aware of their uniqueness than adults are. But adults are definitely more aware of their foundation than kids are, but less aware of their uniqueness. And so you can integrate that. And by the way, you know how rich it is when you do, is you start to recognize the foundation and you have respect for it. It's the fifth commandment, honor your father and your mother, is very rich because it exists more than just your parents. And it's in its superficial manner. And I'm not saying that the superficial lacks substance. I think that if you were to really interact with what it is, it means that you have respect for the foundation that allowed you to be alive. And that kind of knowledge is more than just power, it's freedom. And I believe that's why we seek power. We seek power for freedom, but if we make power our aim, then freedom is secondary, and we become a tyrant. And the tyrant is never free, because he never gets to experience what his kingdom could offer if he wasn't too busy trying to put his thumb over it. So it's become like his self-obsessed manifested prophecy, whereas people eventually turn against him, but actually he has nothing to have in return. He's the tyrannical husband. The thing he swore to protect dies in his arms. It's also interesting because I've been more visual when I speak. I notice that there's like images I describe more than just ideas. So there's a taste and smell element to it too.
It's like one of those movie theaters where you like, what is it called, 4D or something like that? When you're watching the movie and your seat starts to shake and they like spray air in your face.
That just gets to show you how bad it is. You get what I'm saying? That just removes you from a film.
I saw that's where I got the idea, a Mission Impossible poster on the way up here where it said 4D. And then I was like, wait, 4D, that's more than 3D. 3D is 3D. 4D is when your chair starts to shake, when there's a...
Yeah, and then SWAT team breaks through the window and they actually shoot you to get you immersed.
Yeah.
You're so disconnected.
Yeah, I was like, what an idea. I'm just going to watch a movie.
I'm going to do the regular movie.
Old school.
Yeah, I'm going to do old school. Right?
Old school.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay the fuck away from that theater.
Exactly.
Even 3D sucks, dude.
I think I went through a phase when I was younger.
It's cool for kids.
3D, yeah,
but you're also not paying attention.
And then you have to wear those glasses that you... Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Silly stuff.
Sorry, not to go on a tangent.
No, I'm trying to be able to contextualize something that I'm experiencing deeply physiologically, and that's more of my concern at the moment, is the feeling of it, honestly, because that's a tattoo.
I want to go back.
I want it.
I want to go back to, you said that children are more aware of their, what do you say, different... Uniqueness. I would argue against that.
They're more connected
I think they're more connected to it. I don't think they're aware at all. I think that's the beauty of it.
Well, the children have pretty much zero to no awareness, but it doesn't mean that they're unconscious.
Sure.
But that's the whole point. It's like, well, how could you be aware of it? You're absorbing so much information, but you're not just absorbing information. You're absorbing information based off of prior experiences in a life you haven't even been in. Meaning you're experiencing stuff through the sum total of both of your parents and every generation that came prior, and that's your foundation of understanding. If you're not coming close to that, your whole life is one big projection through it. And look, you could say, well, how could you ever be free if you can never trust your eyes? And that's what most people are struggling with, right?
Yeah.
It's like they have no understanding of history, even just human history, but even their own history, their own personal history, and their own developmental history. And we often make it more about this is processing traumas. It's like, no, this is awakening your consciousness, and the whole process of that reveals traumas. And so I recognize that I've been opening up to the consciousness part of it, like really opening up to it. And it makes me realize, why would I want to go deeper into something that brings me closer to things I don't like feeling or experiencing? Greatest question of all time. Because if you're going to crawl down a mine shaft, you better have a good reason. And if I told you something about this mine shaft, that as you go deeper and deeper, the walls get narrower and narrower. And as they get narrower and narrower, you feel more and more resistance with every little bit that you claw into it. And so you have to interact with every little bit of resistance. And so maybe you could say that there's this altruistic ideology we have, which is like, we need to be able to go down to the bottom of that. No, you don't need to. This is a question of if you want to. And we wouldn't believe that we would want something like that. It's like, why would you walk through hellfire for the person you love most? Because it's so damn worth it.
Is it? What do you define hellfire as?
Well, it burns you. You're not coming back out the same side on the other side. Something's leaving.
Right. But what if it's your soul that leaves?
Well, it's the whole component of sacrifice, which is what I wanted to get more into.
Okay.
Right? Which is like, the word korban means to come close in Hebrew.
What is the word?
Korban.
Korban.
Yeah, one pretty much. Oh my God, you're dealing with every time I read it, but it's the sacrificial part of the Bible is about this much of it. You know, it's one of the largest portions of it, and you're like, and I like to kind of look at it more in the broader sense. So you have stories, you have an exodus, you have a trickling of laws, and then you have an abundance of them, compounded with a series of sacrifices, and then back into the stories and a recollection of it all. Okay, it's like this. Think of it this way. It's like the largest possible horizon you can have, you can paint through stories. But then you can start and direct that towards something. And then as you direct it towards something, you could take it even deeper. And then as you take it even deeper, you can even create more nuance to what that story looks like. And then as you expand it all, you can kind of draw one big thing over it all. And you can connect it together. But then what are you looking at? Well, you're looking at a much bigger picture. And by the way, it gives you the ability to look upwards. And that's what the biblical foundation does for an individual if they're very close with it. Well, the reason why I brought up the whole sacrificing part, because I looked at it, it's like all these stories followed by one big exodus, followed by sacrifice everywhere. And it's like, that's an invitation to come closer to what? To what sets you free. And we are religious beings. We've created it one way or another. We've developed it through modern therapy. You know, this becomes to a lot of people a religious experience. And in a lot of ways, I become a priest of sorts. Well, priests are divinely appointed, by the way, which is interesting, meaning that there is a divine component to those things, that they're given to you. And so are your problems. And maybe they're reflective of your gifts. And so when we look at our wounds, for example, if you have a lot, well, you got a lot to look forward to. And if you don't have any virtues, well, you don't have any vices. You probably don't have any virtues either. And they're reflective of something. Again, it feels really powerful. The feelings are a little more of an emphasis to me, more than just the ideas. It's becoming very, very secondary, especially because I didn't expect this to be that powerful. It's a submersion into an ocean, opposed to the lily pad method you've created to avoid everything about the waters. The waters are the most powerful thing in the world, in fact. It's the one thing God used to destroy creation. It's across every culture, this big flood.
Right.
I mean, that's the best way to do it. Like, why not big meteorite? Apparently that's more effective, you know?
Well, water is symbolic of
Life.
and rebirth.
In a lot of ways, but it was also symbolic of destruction too.
That's true.
So it definitely has a feminine component to it, and incredibly to destroy or to build or to give life or to take it. The loving mother or the overbearing one or the neglectful one.
Well, even the simple act of taking a shower or taking a bath, that's symbolic.
Cleansing. By the way, you believe that sound? You know what that is?
What is it again?
That's a Toyota Camry.
Oh, it's a car.
That's a person's car.
I thought it was...
That they're okay to drive like that. And no, I want to use this to my advantage here. That's most people's shit that they bring around everywhere. They have developed a dissonance to the sound that they actually put out there for everybody else.
Right.
And yeah, of course, they've removed their sensitivity. They've developed cognitive dissonance as a way to exist in their life. How do you drive a car like that? Because if that's at 10 miles an hour, don't even tell me about fucking 60, dude.
Right.
Don't even tell me about 60.
Maybe it goes away at 60.
And then, yeah, right? That's what people tell themselves at least, right? But then you can be around nobody close to you because the second you're going 10 miles an hour, people are like, hold a second, dude. How much to fix that? I will pull money out of my pocket right now in order for you to really recognize that that is the worst thing that you can ever bring anywhere.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting component of vulnerabilities and wounds, and what they're really revealing of is that actually if you go down to the bottom of what they tell you to go down to the bottom of, well, then you can experience something that could set you free from it, but also allow you to come closer to it than you ever have. It's not that, the unbeatable odds disappear. You just connect to a part of you that's defiant of all odds, as in it exists outside of it. And so now you're no longer existing with a reductive form of reality. You're actually seeking reality as a way to quantify it, but you're also going deeper into yourself of what you're capable of doing. That's the beautiful life right there. Nothing easy about it, yet it's incredibly fulfilling. And so this really comes down to a commitment that a person makes to it. Do I believe in the person I am, or the person I can be, or the very existence of my life? Honestly, I don't know how a person could live their life without having that question with themselves. Do I even deserve a chance? Is that just like a fairy tale? create in my head, you want to create a weak person, to remove them of that. I mean, that's what we have in our culture across the board, is that I started noticing I was using my intellect to help people justify some ridiculous things. Like this girl I was talking to at a cafe the other day, and she told me, like, oh, age doesn't matter. I said, tell that to your doctor. She's like, I don't have a doctor. I was like, that explains it.
Well, that actually makes me think of, all those tests that people are doing nowadays that track their biological age and not their, that guy, Brian Johnson or whatever his name is?
Yeah, absolute psychopath.
Who now people are in their 40s or 50s or 60s and they get their test done for their biological age. And they're like, oh, I'm actually biologically in my 30s. Or like biologically, I'm 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You take care of yourself.
Right.
And
sure, like being healthy is a great thing.
So what I found was really interesting is that I was having to utilize my intellect to show every reason as to why that's ridiculous. And I just said, at this point, why don't you just lie? Mm-hmm. Because it'd be easier than you having to create this whole narrative that society's been conditioned to thinking that age matters. No, this is a way that allows you to be recognized as a person, that allows you to create difference. And difference is really damn important. And you live without the respect of difference, you're avoiding reality all the time where difference requires you to look. And it's so diminished, it's so destructive and delusional. And to promote that kind of delusion means, different problems, different conversation. Well, anyways, I feel that there's a certain point where every person has to ask themselves that question. And I can't imagine what it would be like to live a life to where you didn't even give it a try. And that's what I found was so interesting, is that when you give yourself a try, you're beginning to believe. And it was interesting because I had this interaction with this man I bumped into yesterday, and it was after I was starting to feel what that looks like. And it's like, there's eventual knowing of God, but the whole process of that knowing is faith. And you could develop that eventually to where you know him. And by the way, it's a completely different experience of life. Life no longer becomes a problem to solve anymore. Mm-hmm. You start paying more attention, and you also start looking where you need to look. And I think that a lot of the stories that people create is they create a God that is purely a manifestation of their dysfunction, that they search for externally, which really tells their belief system he doesn't exist. And so neither does your potential, and neither do your dreams. Mm-hmm. And neither do they have any meaning. They're just a manifestation of everything that allows you to cope with existence, because existence is tough and it's unforgiving, and your life seems to be showing a representation of its unforgiving. But look at all those other elites. They don't have those things. They don't have those problems. You can be like them. And then you can go ahead and feed that whole idea, and you could feed that whole dysfunction. But the whole problem with it is a lie, is it's not reflective of reality, because that's A1, that's not where you look for God. B, how do you know you're not putting something onto that isn't representative of what it is? And so that what you have with most people is that they run from one monster into the mouth of the other. And by the way, the other one is typically worse, because the monster you know is always better than the monster you don't. And you better start recognizing that that's more reflective of your reality. And so why would you run to another monster? And then also, if your whole life is just a series of hills and there's no end in sight, and you're constantly running from the one thing that's chasing you, then maybe go ahead and turn your back to whatever that thing is that you're running from. Mm-hmm. Maybe run to it. Eventually, by the way, the second you turn around, you start recognizing that there is another level of consciousness developed. It's no longer the nightmare you run from. It's the dream you run to. And by the way, there's something very interesting about that, is because a person that runs away from darkness is somebody that can never experience peace in their light. They're always terrified. Even when they exist in it, they understand that that thing still exists. And so wherever they go, it's like they bring it with them. And it's disturbing to see how easily human beings can be controlled. But then again, I realize how damn difficult it is to go against that without accepting that you're easily malleable, manipulatable, controllable. Yeah, what exactly quantifies a connection? I think at the basis of all connection, there's faith. And it's a question of what's bringing you together. Because I don't know, I don't really have a lot of faith. Not a lot of faith, not in the classical sense, but I'm learning it. Mm-hmm. Because, hopeful thinking is very, very different. It's very cheap. And I'm beginning to feel like it's not very interesting, What to have faith in humanity, to have faith in your life, to have faith in your purpose, to have faith in the things that you're committed to. Again, it's all very new for me. So I'm not really expecting myself to have any kind of grand revelation. I enjoy the experience of it more than anything else, Jake.
Yeah, you don't need to have the answers right now.
No, I don't even think that was never important to begin with. It's a dance that I'm experiencing for the first time that I'm more enjoying than I am the answer. And I felt like that was the big difference. The big difference was I want to go deeper. Mm-hmm. I want to swim deeper. I want to dig deeper. I want to put my hands in the soil. I want to get dirty. I want to get closer.
Well, it's interesting because I think we live in an area like Los Angeles where faith is, I think any major metropolitan city like Los Angeles is lacking in faith, to be honest. I think whenever I go to church, their mission is to bring religion and faith back to...
Well, that's what I think. I think you could separate faith from religion.
I think
you would really help people connect to religion. And that's what because it's reductive to faith to put it in the box of religion. It expands religion to put it into faith. Because then faith is the sum total of all of what religious thoughts is trying to get you close to. And if that's the end goal, then you need to see whether or not you connect to it. But it's also not limited to whatever it has to offer. It's not a restriction. And because it's interesting, faith in what?
So when I think of, okay, so let's just say the word faith, the term faith. When I think of faith, my mind immediately shoots to religion. I think, faith in God, faith in what happens after we die, faith in what's beyond myself. But I totally understand. I agree with what you're saying. Faith shouldn't be boxed into just the religious category because faith is a very general term that exists beyond religion.
Religion is trying to quantify what faith is. And it's very interesting because I'm a deeply religious person.
Sure.
But I've never known what it is to believe in God.
What do you mean?
Well, because that's the thing I find is really interesting. To believe in God. Like, my head starts running in circles. But when I could speak from my heart, I noticed a different message. And I think it's one that the mind can't really quantify that, just as the mind can't really quantify love. And I think that there's a place where the mind and the heart meet that allows faith to be a conversation that's productive. Because we have to start incorporating our consciousness into the conversation, not more just so much an intellectual one or an emotional one. I think it's the collectivity of the both and all of your past experiences with reality and life that you're looking at as the canvas you're going to paint the picture. And you remove that all from each other, faith becomes a really faith in what? Like faith in Jesus' existence. Faith in, God spoke to the Jews at Mount Sinai that actually allowed the Ten Commandments to exist, the basis of all morality. Well, and it's like, one second. For 1 second, faith in the meaning of your life is the best place to start. And I mean why it's the best place to start is because it will translate it to everything else, and you'll start to see how the stories are reflective of that. And so I wanted to get into it a little bit deeper. Why not?
Wait, hold on. Before you do that, let me look up, very basic, what is the definition of faith? I just want to see what it says. Complete trust or confidence in someone or something. The second definition is strong belief in God, or in the doctrines of a religion, based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof.
They're very, very weak. They're very, very weak.
Well, yeah.
I don't have proof of any of these things. I don't have proof of any of these things. In fact, I sound like a quack. Now, to some, I really don't care. Tell that to musicians when they make music. Mm-hmm. What are they in touch with? What are they making music from? In fact, if you look at musicians make music, they're just listening. And they're like, okay, that sounds good. We'll put that as our verse.
Yeah.
What's the chorus? And by the way, it's not like they're spending hours fucking trying to rip their skull open. And what you just looked at was magic. Mm-hmm. Because that's what magic really is. And so this is the thing that's interesting, because I could describe it to you a little bit deeper. And it is, by the way, you have to direct your consciousness at the level that you have it. And you could direct that towards the things that are most meaningful to you and most important to you. And you could say, what are those things that are most meaningful and important to me? And okay, I'm going to fully commit to that. And then you're like, well, every part of me doesn't want to fully commit to that. That was not such an easy send. Just even the conversation was difficult. I'm already looking for a how as to how I can create the answer to that. Well, that's not true. That's not why you live your life. That's not where you live your life. There's a space in you that most people don't even want to acknowledge. Is that there are the things that you do for you, and they're called decisions. Free will, if you want to call it that. When you're there, here's what happens. It's a dance in your soul. It's the reason why. It's the reason why you do. It's the reason why you live. It's the reason why you're courageous at all. You want to get closer to that in whatever way that you can. And you might even say, well, I'm so far from that. The whole idea of just even getting into a room with that seems like absolutely ridiculous. Well, then they're very perfect. You found your first wall. You're already on the step. You're already walking the path, because you're already dealing with the reductive limitation that most people have adopted to what they call reality. And reality is more wondrous and magical than most people can ever imagine. It says the most impressive thing about magic, that somebody just went to the Magic Castle, is that the trick itself is what maybe amuses the people. It's the imagination of what allowed you to create that. It means that you've conceptualized it yourself, of what effect that would have on people. That means you had to see it as it is, and then you had to see how you can manifest that in reality. So it is magic.
See, I have a...
Look. There's a reason why I do the talking to the camera stuff. I'm not normal, okay? Like,
no,
I'm sharing this because it's a digestive process.
Okay, hold on. Then what is magic?
What is magic? Well, fuck me. I don't even want to go ahead and define the term. I just want to allow you to experience it. Just like the same thing with faith that you were talking about.
But do you believe in magic?
Yes.
Okay, then what is magic? What
I believe in magic. It's not your perception of what magic is. I think the magic is in the representation of understanding the effect that it would have on people to suspend their disbelief. That's the magic.
So it's the
craft.
Okay.
And it's the sum total of what that is, right? And so what we call magic is the ability to make something disappear. That's not that imaginative.
Right.
What's really imaginative is to imagine something that could help other people believe and suspend that belief that this thing has disappeared. And that in fact, actually, you would need to be able to think about what it is to make something disappear. That's the magic.
Yeah.
And to then experience that and then create that, put it in a little box, and then express that box or whatever it is or that message. It's the same thing with music. It's an experience that's too damn wide, too damn big. You don't just talk about the story of your life, right? Well, then how can you condense the story of your life or a message like fatherhood or love or unity or family into something that's 2.5 minutes? Well, I think it's an extraordinary gift that human beings have. It's the ability to tell a story. And that is the magical part of ourselves. How did you do that? Isn't that magic? You just condensed that whole thing into a song that's repeatable, replayable, on a loop, that speaks to you in every single different direction, in every dimension, all at once. Yeah, we're capable of that. Now, what I did notice, though, is that there has to be a proximity with that very thing. And that proximity with that very thing will change who you hang out with, the way you live your life, who you tell yourself you are. All of those things will go out the window. And by the way, you want to come closer to it, because the closer you come to it, the further you will come away from everything that has been a commitment to make sure that never happens. And so it could feel a little bit like your life is falling apart. Well, that life is.
Right.
And what I also noticed something interesting about the integration of your protective mechanisms is the voluntary disintegration of it and the reintegration of that very thing in the direction that serves you most. And then you go, well, what serves you most? Well, it's what has your best interest in mind. And you better be really damn clear about what that is. And a lot of the time people think of it as a particular outcome of what it is. It's always a person of who you can become. A lot of the time we separate ourselves from that outcome of the being, the person, the very thing we really want to be. You don't give the kid the lollipop. It's like, well, you want him to recognize the development of character is the thing that he wants. And perhaps maybe it's a struggle at first until he recognizes, if I don't learn how to ask for please, that will be a problem that I'll have with me my whole life. The lollipop's secondary. Some people are still looking for that. Still kicking their feet till they get it. But then again, they're still abandoning and neglecting everything about their life. So the whole faith conversation is interesting because I don't believe that it exists just in the religious context, or at least what you immediately associate it to, which is religion. I think that it exists completely and totally entirely outside of it. And I believe that religion is trying to help people get closer to what that is. And faith is a necessity for the human experience. Without it, your humanity never gets to develop to its heights, to the capacity of its beauty, and the capacity of its goodness. Because the things that require some of the greatest good of all time throughout human history require the strongest faith. And I believe that the biblical stories are representative of that faith. And if people are forgetting what the stories are trying to convey, you're the intellectual that's always right but always misses the point. You miss you can't, what's it called? You miss the forest from the trees. And you could say, well, that's the unintegrated spirit. And I notice that that's what happens to most people, is that, they miss the forest from the trees. And what ends up happening is that they're diminishing the experience of their life, because their whole life has become the analysis of a single tree in the forest. And how does that happen? Right? Well, it's psychological imprisonment. That's why we're looking to fields like this. People won't even psychologically liberate themselves. Well, you have your BDSM community, you have every single narrative on planet Earth, right? You can do whatever it is to liberate yourself. But they don't seem any more liberated, do they? So this whole understanding of what it is to develop freedom, what is freedom? I think really starts with what is faith? And then all the other questions start to develop around that, because it's the strongest thing you can ever have.
Right.
And you might go, where does it exist? Well, it exists internally. Well, how deeply does it exist? Well, you're willing to let go of everything else that's not that.
Well, I think it also depends.
And it's not hard.
I think it also depends on the person, right?
What do you mean?
How deeply does it exist? Do you think every single person has some sort of faith?
People are more unconscious of the faith that they have. They've actually developed a kind of belief in something.
So even if you're unconscious of it, though, you still have faith.
At a level, yeah. You could deepen it, though. Like one of them says,
Sure.
come closer. I want to come closer. Ooh, that's so rich. But then, you also said something to me before, which I found was interesting. Where we search for it is very interesting. Because I even myself find it that it was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm looking for this loving relationship. Or that was my commitment. I rolled the ball down the hill. It took me here. Mm-hmm. It took me, in a room with me, alone with myself, looking at the ground, crawling down a mine shaft, asking if I want to dig deeper. And when I realized the very thing that I'm looking for takes me even deeper than where I'm willing to go. And then it was like, what's important to you? You don't need to lie to yourself about what's important to you. Mm-hmm. You know it. And it was interesting because I used women as a lot of my life as a way to compensate this feeling of hope. And I feel like there is a difficulty in understanding, like, love is an existential question in a lot of ways. Right? Like, what is it to love someone? Is that something that's really there? Is that something that's real? Is that even a component of existence? Is it just one big nihilistic nightmare of none of it meaning anything, and we all need something from each other, and we found more elaborate ways of doing it. We found colorful terminology in order to make us feel like that thing's there, because there's an inevitability of all of our lives, and it's called death. And maybe it's a black screen after. Mm-hmm. In the experience of the faith itself, it was enough. It is enough. That's the best way to put it. It's enough in the experience.
In the faith itself, it's enough of the experience.
It's the richest experience in your life, because you start recognizing it. You want to get closer. Mm-hmm. You want to get closer. I mean, that's like the flower blossoming. It opens. Mm-hmm. And it's a doorway to something that I'm beginning to learn. And it was interesting because just the other day I saw an old high school friend walking on the street. And as he walked with another friend of his that I didn't quite recognize. But I noticed, I was like, I don't bump into high school friends just walking around a block. And as they cross the street, I get stuck in a red light. I'm like, whatever, they're going to go the other way, I'll let them go. And I find that very interesting, is that it's already worked out as a component of faith too. But you can't just have that. You have to work for it. And I feel like you want to work for faith. And I was thinking about that as I was walking towards this to my friend. And as I give my friend a hug, I say to the other guy, what's your name? And before he even tells me his name, and he goes, you look like a guy who's beginning to believe in God.
He said that to you?
He said that to me before he said anything else. Said, you couldn't be more right. That was the most incredible thing that's ever come out of your mouth. And then, he also tells me the next thing he says right after that, which I thought was even more compelling. He's like, yeah, my whole life I expected God to deliver something to me, to have faith. And I realized that he'd be taking away my choice and diminishing my ability to choose it. Mm. It's like, you could choose to have faith, and you could choose to have that. I mean, 33-year-old Israeli guy, who found out that you can just make a decision to have it. Mm-hmm. It's like a love. It's really love. It's a cosmic kind of love.
Yeah.
It's a cosmic kind of love. There's a lot of freedom in it. So much freedom in it. So much more room. So much more room. You would think that the closer I get, the more room I have. Well, it's opening up something inside of me. And suffering a lot less. But willing to go places most people wouldn't. And what would drive somebody to go most places people wouldn't? That love I was talking about.
Yeah.
So why would somebody walk through hellfire for the thing that they love most? It's because it's the very thing that allows them to genuinely conquer all of what reality has to offer. And it's a man who's driven by love is willing to walk through hellfire. Nobody gets past that. So nobody gets to experience what's inside. And so if you're not aware of how worth it is, you'll never even take the first step. Yeah, so this is the thing that's interesting about stories, is that there's a reason to why people do and why they live. And there's a reason that runs so deep, it gives them peace in their life, knowing that they would give it regardless of what it can give them. And then there's belief there. And then where there's that, the soil's rich. And most people are unaware of how rich the soil of their life is. They never even begin to plan on it. They're too busy trying to look elsewhere. And I only say that just because that's just typically what happens if you don't look down at it.
Right.
Because there's a level of, if I'm going to get deeper with this, then I'm locked in by it. And so what most people's ego do is they go, you're right, get off this field, go run, go find another place where you're not locked in. Well, then you're locked in by anything. Everything that requires you to go deeper within yourself locks you in. Why not take marriage? You're locked in, candy shop's closed. I would just hope that you're with somebody who's as committed to your life as you are your own. And then you have nothing to worry about. You'll set yourself free through the very relationship. You'll spread wings.